All right, so let's talk about how to build your team. This can be one of the most difficult things that people struggle with whilst organizing their hackathon. Actually getting people on their side to work with them can be pretty tough, but here are some pro tips on how to make sure that goes smoothly, okay? So, first of all, I'm Tim. I'm the EU Commissioner for Major League Hacking. So I help out organizing like all of the hackathons that we work with in Europe. So first question you have to ask is, why do you need a team? Well, to be honest, you can't do this alone, okay? If you try and do it alone, you know, you might be able to do an okay job, but you're going to go gray, your hair's going to fall out, you're going to be stressing constantly, it's going to be extremely difficult. If you just get 2 or 3 more people on your side to help you out, then it's going to be way easier to organize your hackathon, and it's going to be absolutely awesome. It's also going to be a lot more fun. Like, it's a lot more fun working with other people and you know, succeeding together. So, what types of team are there? First of all, you might have a committee where everything is done, you know, by vote. You know, you decide things together. You might also have a hierarchy where there are directors and they're the ones who make the decisions and they tell everybody else what to do. It's like, no, you must do this, and I'm the one who's right. But then you can also have a mix of both. And I really think having a mix of both is one of the best ways of forming a team, because that way everybody feels like they have an input into the discussion. Everybody's involved in the decision-making process. If the person at the top, you know, says something stupid, then people feel okay trying to overrule them. But still, if you need to just cut the discussion and make a decision, you have the ability to say, okay, we're going to do this. But it is possible to have too many people on your team, okay? You know, if you've got 50 people on your team, that's probably too much. And that's because teams don't actually scale with the size of your hackathon, right? So you think that a 2,000-person hackathon should have a team 10 times the size of a 200-person hackathon? It doesn't work like that, because say ordering furniture for 2,000 people takes the exact same amount of time as ordering furniture for 200 people. So it doesn't scale linearly. A rule of thumb, if your subcommittees have subcommittees, then you know you have a problem, okay? So how do you go about recruiting your team and, you know, making them you know, want to join you? So let's talk about the different types of recruitment that you can do in order to get people onboarded, who you want to recruit, types of people you want to recruit, and how then do you actually encourage them to get on your team. So first of all, the types of recruitment. You can do it by election, where, you know, you're going to, you know, people in your organization are going to vote. You could do it by, you know, interviews, where the people who ran the event last year, they decide who's going to run it next year. You could do a mix of the two, where, you know, candidates are vetted by the people who were organizing it last year, and then there's an election in place. Now, if you already have like a computer science society, or you have some club that you want to run the hackathon as a part of, then you're most likely going to just adopt that club's method of, you know, electing officials. Maybe it's already by election, in which case it makes sense for it to be by election, right? And if you're starting a club from scratch, then you know, you get to decide exactly how do we do this kind of recruitment. There are also a couple of other ways that people can kind of join in to your organizing team. One is, you know, you're just going to grab a friend and say, hey, we have to go do this, and they'll do a favor for you and help you out. And the other one is people who just kind of get shit done. That you tell them, oh, hey, we're doing this hackathon thing, and they come to you a week later and be like, oh, I heard you're doing this hackathon thing, so I made you a website. And they just kind of do stuff for you and become a part of a team quite naturally, just because they're so self-motivated to actually help, you know, your thing become a reality. So they're just going to fit in quite naturally. Now, the thing is, whatever kind of method that you choose, it doesn't really matter. Okay, there are pros and cons to all of these, but you're going to choose the one which, you know, already works with your organization, or is already how organizations at your university work, or that you feel the best with. And whatever one you choose is not really important. What is important is who you recruit and how you recruit them. So who do you want to recruit? First of all, you want to recruit freshmen, okay? Because these are the people who are going to be the future of your event. If your team is completely made up of seniors, then next year's hackathon is in deep trouble, right? Because you're not going to have anybody organizing next year who has organized a hackathon before. So definitely get kind of young blood in. You want to get some past organizers involved. Now maybe they're done with organizing the event, they don't really want to have a huge influence, but they could be there and you keep them updated and tell them, hey, this is what we're doing. Do you have any advice? And they can be there at an advisory position to tell you, oh yeah, this vendor that we tried to use last year sucks really, really bad. You should go with somebody else. Another thing to keep in mind with past organizers is that they have their own way of doing things, and it's not necessarily the best way of doing things. It might be just what they're used to, or it might be they have an idea of like this is how it should be done. So don't be afraid of saying no, we're going to try something new to past organizers. They might have a kind of seniority, but like the current committee is in control. You also want to involve your faculty champion. So it's really important to find somebody who's going to champion your hackathon and your cause internally amongst the administration at your school. This can just be a professor who is like, oh, I think what you're doing is really, really cool. I want to try and help you out. You need to find that person, because having an ally like that on your side whilst talking to administration is really, really vital for actually getting things done. Because the administration is going to listen to that professor or that staff member way more than they're actually going to listen to you, unfortunately. That's just how it works most of the time. So have them involved in the team and the organization as well. Have them in your emails and tell them how it's going so that they feel like they're part of the team and they feel invested in helping you out. So what types of people do you want to look for whilst you're trying to build up your team? Is it a good idea to have everybody be CS majors? Probably not, actually, because you want to have a diverse set of people. You want to have people who you're catering to, the hackers. They're not always CS majors, so you want to have a diverse set of people. You definitely want to cater to diverse backgrounds, so don't make your team look exclusive in some way. Be inclusive to make sure that everybody can get on board and help out with this. It's also very good if they've been to a hackathon before, because then they actually know what to expect and they know what they're trying to aim for. And then on the personal side of things, they should be self-motivated, because that's absolutely vital for them to actually get shit done. If they're not a motivated person and you look at them and say well, you're kind of lazy, you don't want them on your team, because there's going to be very little motivation for them to do anything. They should be professional, because they're going to be dealing with vendors, they're going to be dealing with administration, they're going to be dealing with sponsors, they're going to be dealing with hackers, who you should also treat in a professional way, even though they're kind of your peers. So they should be able to speak in a professional way. They should know how to use email in a professional way and write in a professional way. You don't want poorly written emails going out to sponsors, because that, you're not going to get any money, none. And you should look for a past history of teamwork or organizing other events. It doesn't have to be hackathons. It can be something really stupid. It could be zombie laser tag or something. Oh, I've organized zombie laser tag before. It's well, you've clearly shown some past history of doing some good events. It's also good to keep in mind that MLH is part of your team too. We're here to help you out and to make sure that your organizing is going well, and that if you have any problems, you can come to us and ask us questions. So, we get on a call with you and, we ask you updates, not for any random reason, but because we want to know how you're doing, and if you're having any trouble, that we can help you out. So that's what we're there for. You should think of us as part of your team. So what are some good ways to make people want to join your team? This can be really, really tough because it's a huge time commitment for organizers. So you want to make sure that they're really into it. So one thing you can do is foster a sense of camaraderie to make sure that people think oh, that looks really fun. I'd love to be part of that group of people and work with them to create something cool. So a couple of ways you can do this. One way is like having staff T-shirts or staff swag or some way that people are easily recognizable and like, hey, I'm part of this team. Having social events can be helpful with that too, so that people kind of bond more together. But obviously, don't overdo it. Don't become so tight-knit that it kind of becomes exclusive. Just watch out for that. So one thing you want to do whilst you're kind of recruiting people as well is you want to make sure you're upfront with the time commitment, okay? It's very, very important that people know how much time is going to be involved. And it's going to be a lot of time, okay? Because you have to get things done, so you will take as long as it takes to get it done. And make sure you get those kinds of people who are dedicated on your team. People who are like, I could help out for like an hour or so a week. Yeah, that's probably not somebody you want on their team because it's going to be more than an hour a week, right? So, you've encouraged everybody to come onto your team, you've elected them or you've selected them or whatever. What do you do next? You want to welcome them aboard. So, first thing is, say hello. You want to maybe organize a meetup where you get all the organizers together and just meet each other. Maybe you haven't seen each other before, so it's good to introduce each other. Maybe talk about initially what we want to do to start planning the event. Send out an email with info on, hey, this is what we've done so far, this is what we're planning on doing, this is when the meetings are going to be, et cetera, et cetera. And you also want to gather as much details as possible about the people on your team. You want to friend them on Facebook, get their email addresses, get their phone numbers, because they're going to need to be contactable. And it really, really sucks when there's somebody there who needs a contact and they're not looking at their emails or they don't have internet access or something, and you need to phone them and you don't have their phone number. Like, definitely get as many contact details as you can. You need multiple points of attack there. Just before I go on, like a lot of what I've said so far, you're kind of assuming that, hey, you have a culture at your school already. Like you maybe have a club and you have people that you can go to and market to in order to get them on your team. Maybe you don't have a club at all. So in which case, recruiting just becomes a case of going to your friends, going to people who are interested, and being like, hey, we're going to do this. This is going to be awesome. And it's very like one-on-one kind of thing where it's, I'm going to grab you and we're going to get in a room, once a week and plan this out. Now that you have your team, how do you work effectively together? So can we guess what the main thing I'm going to say here? What's the most important thing for working as a team? Yeah? What do you think? Boom! Communication, yes, exactly. You need to communicate. It's really, really important. If you don't communicate, you're setting yourself up for failure. And if you don't communicate, I guarantee you're going to do a terrible job. So it's really, really important. So one thing is you want to have meetings. If you're going to communicate, you need to meet together. So these are some types of meetings that you will want to use in order to communicate effectively. So first off, the all hands is when you get everybody on your organizer team together to talk about the overall state of affairs of the event, how the plans are going, and what you want to be doing in the coming weeks in order to get things rolling. A stand-up is like a very quick update. It's called a stand-up because everybody's standing up, because it's quick. And that's for quick updates, but it can also be for team-specific updates. So maybe your sponsorship team will have a stand-up just to talk about sponsorship-specific stuff. Or maybe your logistics team has a stand-up to talk about venue stuff. And then they go back and feed that into the all-hands so that everybody understands what's going on. And lastly, one-on-ones, where kind of the people at the top, the directors, are talking to everybody on the team individually. Just to make sure that people are doing okay, solving their problems if they have any, or keeping them engaged. If somebody is going to be going on holidays for 2 weeks, or maybe they've got an exam coming up, on your one-on-one, you should be able to talk to them about that and find out about it so that okay, this is going to be something we have to cover for them. So these kind of things are, if you've ever worked in a company before, you've probably seen all of these types of meetings before. I just want to stress, organizing a hackathon is going to make you a really good manager. Because this is essentially it. It's leadership and management is a lot of what it's about. So it's a really great experience in order to kind of develop those skills. So what kind of tools do you want to use in order to talk to each other in this way? Well, Facebook groups absolutely suck for organizing events, okay? They are hard to search through. Everything drops down really easily. It's a terrible, terrible system, and so many people use it for organizing events. Please don't, okay? So firstly, for instant messaging, use something like Slack or HipChat or FlowDoc or something. A lot of organizations use Slack. It's really, really effective. It's definitely very, very good. And you get free versions. It's great. Another thing is, although most of your all of your friends, and all of your peers are going to be using Facebook Messenger or Snapchat or whatever in order to communicate, outside in the rest of the world, it's email. Email is the way you communicate. And anytime you're talking with administration, anytime you're talking with vendors, anytime you're talking with sponsors, it's going to be via email. So you need to get good at email, okay? So many times, there are students who aren't good at checking their email because, none of their friends are talking to them via email, right? So why would you check it? And, you miss opportunities because of that. If the sponsor doesn't hear back from you from a month or 3 weeks or whatever, they're just going to be like, nah, not worth it. Sorry, I'm out. Okay? So you're going to miss opportunities if you're not checking your email regularly and if you don't know the proper email etiquette, right? For meetings, Google Hangouts is really, really awesome. I love Google Hangouts over Skype because you can get a URL with Google Hangouts and then you can easily share it amongst the people who need it. And also you can integrate UberConference with it. UberConference is like a phone-in conference line. So if you have people on your team who are traveling, for example, and or they're in a car or whatever, they can't use Hangouts, but they can call in on the UberConference line. So you can get everybody on. It's really, really easy. So let's look at some best practices for communication. First one is something called having a low bus factor. And the idea behind this is, how badly is your event going to suffer if one of your organizers gets hit by a bus? Okay? It's about a measure of redundancy. If you have somebody in the organization who knows everything that's happening with the venue and furniture and the Wi-Fi, for example, and nobody else knows apart from that person, and they get run over by a bus, you're screwed, right? Because you don't know what's happening. You don't know at all. So you want to make sure that everybody knows what everybody else is doing at all times. We actually had this at one of the hackathons in the UK. One of the main organizers who knew everything about the plans but nobody else did actually got a collapsed lung and had to go into hospital, right? Which is terrible, but also terrible for the rest of the team because they're running around going oh my God, we've got no idea what's going on now because he's gone and he was the one who knew everything. And in fact, in that very same hackathon, a different organizer literally got run over by a car the day before the hackathon started. So it can happen. It's important to have redundancy and make sure that everything is fully visible. Okay? CC everybody else into all of your emails to make sure everybody knows what's going on. Make sure you're updating people on all hands about what you're doing. Second thing is something called siloing. Siloing is when teams or subcommittees, in your overall team aren't talking to each other. So, for example, what happens if the finance team thinks that the logistics team is buying food, and the logistics team thinks that the finance team is buying food, and they don't talk to each other? You end up on the day being like, I thought you were getting it, and you have no food, right? So it's really, really important, again, that you have full visibility. CC everybody, make sure everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So there's also a term called bike shedding. And that's when, if you're getting somebody to design a skyscraper, like say your team is designing a skyscraper, then you're going to have an architect, and that architect is going to say, this is how we should do it, and everybody's going to like, yeah, sure, of course, we trust the architect, we're not going to argue with the architect, they know what they're doing. But if you're building a bike shed, everybody has their own idea of the best way to build a bike shed. It's like, and they argue over the smallest things, okay? The point is, it doesn't matter, like the bike shed is not important, it's not worth arguing over. Somebody just needs to make the decision and say, this is how we're doing it, and make that happen. So you want to have full visibility, but people should have ownership of what they're doing, right? That you can give the task of building a bike shed to somebody and just let them do it, okay? You have to trust that they're doing a good job. And at the end of the day, all of these things are about having trust. It's trusting the other people in your team, trusting people who are like under you in the organization to do their job. So really important things like tools around this is, first of all, share everything. Using something like Dropbox is great. Google Drive is really great because you are sharing like all of the documents, the planning documents. Everybody can see what everybody else is working on. Like the really nice thing about Drive in particular is that you can edit on things at the same time, and it's really easy to share links and stuff. So it's really great. Like use Drive or Dropbox or OneNote or whatever the hell you want to use, but just use one. Like having two is far too many. Definitely make a clear plan and make sure that's visible to the entire team. Make sure everybody knows what status everything is in, right? And keep each other accountable. So Trello is really good for making sure that people are doing their tasks and making sure people know what they're meant to do. You could just use a list, like whatever works. But yeah, make sure that people are accountable and they know what they're meant to be doing. But when you're making goals for people to do, you have to make sure that they're smart goals. So smart means that first it has to be specific, okay? It also has to be measurable. So for example, if you say something like, oh, we want to make progress with sponsorship, that means nothing. Like we come back a week later, do we know if we made progress or not? Have we made the right amount of progress? You have to have something that's specific and measurable. So you say, I want to send out 10 sponsorship emails before next week, okay? It has to be assigned to somebody. So you need an owner. If you're at a meeting and you say, oh, we need to order food, and then you just leave it at that, well, who's going to order it? You can't just trust that somebody is going to do it. And again, it's the term, you might have siloing happening. You might have two people who think that they were meant to do it, right? And then you order twice as much food. So you want to say, okay, like Alice, you need to order the food. It should be realistic. So, saying, hey, we want to close all the sponsorship within a week, that's not realistic, and you're just going to not hit that goal. So you want something that's actually possible for you to hit. And then I think the most important thing is it has to be time framed. So you need to say, this needs to be done by this date. Definitely, that's one of the toughest things dealing with students. They've got a lot of other things going on. So you need to make sure and make clear that, look, okay, this actually needs to be done by this time, otherwise you're going to be falling behind. So what kind of structure do you want to put your team in? Usually we like to break it up into 3 different parts. So maybe you have 3 people, maybe you have 3 subcommittees, but these 3 kind of cover the areas that you want to be looking at. So the first is logistics and operations. These are the people who are dealing with the venue, they're dealing with the Wi-Fi, they're dealing with the furniture, they're dealing with like shipping, anything around that. Second is finance and sponsorship. So they're making sponsorship proposals, they're sending out emails, they're invoicing sponsors, maybe they're paying for things. Then thirdly, you've got media and outreach. These are the people who are designing the website, they're designing the logo, t-shirts, they're doing the social media, they're setting up the registration system, the application system, and they're reaching out to students to try and get people to come to your event. So those 3 areas, if you've got teams working on all of them, that covers pretty much everything you need to cover. So here's some pro tips for building your team. First of all, volunteer at other events. That's going to be really, really useful in order to learn about what a good event looks like and to have some experience running an event on the ground. And there are plenty of people here who you could volunteer at their event if you wanted to, so you should definitely go speak to them. Keep in mind, like, you should be mature. You should be willing to compromise on things if you need to. Again, don't bike shed, and don't argue. Like, if you need to have a debate about something, have a reasoned debate. Don't let it get personal or heated in any way. I know it sounds obvious now, but like, it's something you definitely need to keep in mind, that as leaders, you need to act as an example in that way. So just keep that in mind. And also, make sure that everybody feels valued. Make sure that their contributions are valued. If somebody says something and you don't agree with it, don't be like, no, we're not doing that, that's stupid. Say like, oh, I see where you're coming from, that's an interesting idea, but I think it mightn't work because of X, Y, Z reason. So, that's the reason that people are going to be coming back, if they feel like they're valued as part of a team and that they had a good time organizing the event. Then they're going to come back and they're going to organize it again. So the 3 rules to team building are, first of all, make a team that people want to join. Second of all, communicate. And third of all, communicate. Okay? You really, really need to communicate well. So that's me on joining a team. And I'll see you. Next up.